welcome to the Bible for Worship at St. Paul Lutheran Church on this 13th Sunday after Pentecost, when our scripture reading is written in the book of Joshua, the 24th chapter, verses 1 and 2a, and then skipping to verses 14 through 18. Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and summoned the elders, the heads, the judges, and the officers of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to all the people, "Now therefore revere the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Then the people answered, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord, our God, who brought us and our ancestors up from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did those great signs in our sight. He protected us along all the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the peoples, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore, we also will serve the Lord, because the Lord is our God." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Here we come at the end of the book of Joshua, very end of the book of Joshua, at a turning point in the life of biblical Israel. But while this may be the end of a book, this is not a turning point that is the end for Israel. It is rather very much a beginning. There is a focus on what lies ahead in all this, while granted in the section of this reading that is omitted from the lectionary, the appointed reading for the day, in verses 2 through 13, there is a history which God recites to Israel through the voice of Joshua that is then summarized by the people in their response to Joshua in verses 17 and 18. And this history is indeed what God has done for Israel in bringing them out of Egypt, in leading them through the wilderness, in rescuing them from kings and nations that would have sought to destroy them. And the people have heard this history and internalized it, for they know that it is God who has done this for them. But Joshua goes on in the verses after this reading to say to the people, "But you won't be able to live faithfully to God as you have promised." And Israel responds, "Yes, we will." And so Joshua makes a covenant with them that is between them and the Lord about how they will live with the Lord as their God, and says that the very land itself, symbolized by a stone that he sets up, will be their witness perpetually as to how shall they do. How shall they do is the way that the question is posed here at the end of Joshua, as the beginning of their time in the land. And yet, when we look at this text in its historical context, when we understand when Joshua, the book, was written and read, there's yet another time flip. Because Joshua, as a book, is written not at the beginning to ask how had they done, but near the end of Israel's time in the land. And it asks the question and looks back to question, how have they done? That is the question that the book puts to the reader. Not how shall they do, but how had Israel done? And the answer, quite frankly, as depicted in the succeeding books of Judges and Samuel and Kings, ending with the exile to Babylon which the reader is facing, the answer to how had they done is not really well at all. They were facing exile. They were facing, as Joshua had told them they would, that same fate that had befallen the nations before them in the land, which they affirmed was God's work, that God had driven out the Amorites before them. And Joshua had said, and if you do not live faithfully as God's people, God will also drive you out. And that now is what the community reading this story was facing. It isn't just the grinding wheel of history that threatens you and your security in the land, as you may worry. No, it is God's hand now, the writer of Joshua says, just as it was God's hand then. And so the question put to the reader when the book is written is Joshua's question, again looking forward. It's not the question put to the ancestors, but it is the question put to the current reader, and even to us as readers today. Choose this day whom you will serve. God bless.